Thank you. Welcome to the October 13th, 2021 City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Board hearing. We'll begin by taking a roll call by our board members. Board Member Boyle.
I'm here.
Board Member Allen is absent. Board Member Crockett.
Here.
Board Member Ayers.
Here.
Board Member Peterson.
Here.
Vice Chair Villanueva Saucedo.
Here.
And Chair Sarkisian, I'm here. As part of today's agenda, we have a consent agenda, and it will be read into the record and acted on in one motion. The items will not be discussed individually. However, if anyone wants to speak on a specific item, please complete a comment card that is with, and give it to online or with Rebecca. We have received several comment cards, which we will be pulling off a couple items. However, one of the items which we have received a lot of comment cards for is being continued. So we would ask that those comments will be referred to the October 27th, 2021 hearing. So as of right now, we are pulling off items 4C and 4D. Is there any other person who wishes to speak on any items? Okay. Seeing none, I'll introduce Board Member Crockett, who will read the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The consent agenda consists of the following items. Agenda item 2A, the minutes from the September 22nd, 2021 study session and regular meeting. Item 2B, the corrected minutes from the June 9, 2021 regular meeting. Agenda item 3A, which is case ZON 21-00132 in District 4 within the 800 block of West Broadway Road, north side, and within the 300 block of South Extension Road, west side, located east of Alma School Road on the north side of Broadway Road. This is a site plan review and a special use permit. The staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item 3B is case ZON 21-00589 in District 6 within the 9300 to 9400 blocks of East Ray Road, north side, the 5000 to 5200 blocks of South Bradley Way, east side, and within the 9300 block of East Serenity Avenue, south side, located east of Ellsworth Road and north of Ray Road. This is a site plan review. The staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Agenda item 3C is case ZON 21-00640 in District 6. This item has been withdrawn at the request of the applicant. And that is the staff recommendation, withdrawal. Item 3D is case ZON 21-00653 in District 6 within the 9800 to 9900 blocks of the East Williamsfield Road alignment, south side, and within the 6000 to 6300 blocks of the South Crisman Road alignment, west side, located on the southwest corner of the Crisman and Williamsfield Road alignments. This request will approve the Development Unit 3 Development Unit Plan within the Pacific Proving Grounds North Community Plan, also known as the Cadence Community Plan. The staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Agenda item 3E is case ZON 21-00689 in District 6 within the 9300 to 9500 blocks of East Elliott Road, north side, and within the 3400 to 3600 blocks of South 94th Place, west side, located east of Ellsworth Road on the north side of Elliott Road. This is a site plan review. The staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Agenda item 4A is case ZON 20-00840 in District 1 within the 1000 block of East McKellips Road, south side, located west of Stapley Drive on the south side of McKellips Road. This is a rezone from single residence 9 RS9 and multiple residence 4 RM4 to multiple residence 2 RM2 with a planned area development overlay and a site plan review. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item 4B is case ZON 21-00278 in District 5. This is a request that would allow for the development of a food truck park. This item, the staff recommendation is that it be continued to the October 27, 2021 P&Z meeting. And Madam Chair, that completes the consent agenda. The remaining items are off the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor? Vote. Board Member Boyle?
I vote aye.
Great. Consent agenda passes with Board Member Allen absent. All right, moving on.
Jessica,
Yes.
before we move on, if some people in the audience have come to speak about the food truck thing, just knowing how difficult it is to get time off to come and meet, I'm wondering, are we just asking them to wait until next time and come again, or are we letting people read things into the record for this meeting for next time?
I believe if we have them speak now, you're gonna have you could possibly have a different board, and they would not hear the same comments. And so it would, if it is possible for you guys to come back or submit an email or something like that, we already have several. If you can possibly do that, that way everybody on the board hears the same testimony, that would be great. So that's what our recommendation is from legal as well.
Understood.
All right, moving on to our two items that we pulled off the agenda, consent agenda. First item is 4C, ZON 21-00540, District 6, within the 10,500 to 10,800 blocks of East Elliott Road and within the 3,500 blocks of South Signal Butte Road, located on the northwest corner of Signal Butte Road and Elliott Road, rezoned from agricultural to light industrial with a planned area development overlay, site plan review, and special use permit. This request will allow for commercial and industrial development. And Cassidy is here for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This is case ZON 21-00540. The subject site is located on the north side of Elliott Road and on the west side of Signal Butte Road. The general plan designation for the property is employment. The intent behind the employment character area designation is to provide for a wide range of high-quality employment with some supportive commercial. The request before you today is a rezone from agricultural to light industrial with a planned area development overlay, site plan review, and special use permit for a service station. This will allow for an industrial and commercial development. Here you can see an existing photo of the site. The site is currently vacant. As a part of the light industrial proposed zoning, the intent is to provide areas that serve the surrounding residential trade area. Industrial uses and commercial uses are permitted within the LI zoning district. However, there will be a development agreement that will prohibit some land uses as a part of this proposed development. The subject request includes a PAD overlay. Those deviations include an increase to the maximum building height to allow for planned industrial operations, a modification to the proposed parking ratio, consistent with the primary use of warehousing, as well as consistent with other industrial developments within the city, and then a reduction of the perimeter landscape yard to permit a shared drive. Here you can see the proposed site plan, which includes 3 industrial buildings totaling approximately 250,000 square feet, as well as 4 commercial pads and a service station on the immediate corner. The site will be accessed from Elliott Road and Signal Butte Road. The site did go through design review at the September 14th hearing. The board had no major concerns, and staff will be working with the applicants to address any outstanding board comments. The applicant did conduct a citizen participation process, which include the required notification letters. They also held a neighborhood meeting in which 0 surrounding property owners attended. Neither the staff nor the applicant has received any contact regarding this development. With that, we find that the proposed development meets the 2040 Mesa General Plan, as well as the Mesa Gateway Strategic Development Plan, and the criteria for review for Chapter 22 for a PAD overlay and 69 for site plan review, and we are recommending approval with conditions.
Thank you, Cassidy. Board members, do you have questions? Board Member Crockett, you asked to pull this case?
Yes, Madam Chair, I don't have any questions. Well, I guess I'll ask Cassidy the same question I would like the applicant to address, and that is what she can tell me about the status of the negotiation of the development agreement.
I think that would best be addressed by Veronica.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. The status of the development agreement is that it's currently still being negotiated. We have not yet finalized that development agreement. We are currently working on finalizing what those prohibited uses will be for this particular property.
And is there a timeline for when you expect that that development agreement would be completed?
Our intent is for it to be completed prior to this case going to the City Council for consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Is there a motion?
Well,
Or,
Madam Chair, I would like to hear from the applicant on
okay.
this.
Does the applicant want to present?
Get your presentation on.
Commissioner Crockett, Adam Baugh, 2525 East Arizona, Biltmore Circle. I have this great presentation. It's got some really fantastic looking slides in there, but I don't know if you want that tonight. Would you like me to answer questions about the development agreement, or would you like me to go through my presentation?
I would. I'm primarily concerned with the status of the development agreement. So yes, please go ahead and address that.
Sure. So as we know, the development agreement is within the purview of the City Council, and it's beyond things related to necessarily this hearing today, but there is a template for a development agreement already out there. Trammell Crow just got one approved by the City Council at the City Council's request. I believe just the last council meeting or the one before that. So that's the one that's been presented to us. We saw it in July and August and made some modifications, and I think we're looking to finalize it with staff.
Okay. And oh, I'm sorry, just one follow-up. In a timeline, when do you expect that that will happen? Any idea?
So we were supposed to meet Thursday. That's been moved to Monday, but we've expressed our willingness to do it since August 16th. So I think it's not our delay.
Chair, board members, Board Member Crockett, because I know the development agreement is very critical to the case moving forward, and I know because of the location of this property, that's something you've been very much careful about, making sure uses that are allowed is developed according to the intended plan of the area. So I want to put it on the record as this case moves forward that without coming to some consensus on the development agreement, this case would not be scheduled for City Council. Or our recommendation could change, because if you look at the staff report right now, one of the conditions of approval is compliance with the development agreement. So our recommendation is very much hinged on the type of agreement that we will reach, because that's really part of our recommendation. So there are two things. One, if we don't reach an agreement, it won't be scheduled, or even if it gets scheduled, our recommendation could change as well. So that's something to consider.
Okay.
So it wouldn't, the case would not go to a hearing unless the development agreement is agreed upon?
That's something we will recommend. By the end of the day, the applicant can still decide to pursue and move the case forward to City Council. But at that point, staff recommendation could change, because it may not be in compliance with the development agreement that we intend to, basically, the agreement we intend to reach.
And this site did not opt in, correct?
That's correct, Chair, board members. So yes, I think that's what I've said to the board a couple of times. There's no requirement to obtain, but because we have a goal for that area, whenever there is any proposed rezoning, we try as much as possible to work with the applicant to really head towards that direction of still achieving the goal. And some of the tools, or the major tool we've used for such a thing, is through the development agreement. So that is really key to our recommendation of the rezoning.
And Madam Chair, if I could just follow up with a question. If the development agreement, well, if the staff were to change its recommendation in this case, after we've already made the recommendation and voted on it, does it come back to us, or what happens in that situation? How does the staff change its recommendation after we've voted on it in this meeting?
Chair, Board Member Crockett, that's a good question. So we will add an addendum or summary to the staff report that the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board was hinged on the condition of the development agreement, because your recommendation is based on the conditions that we've given to you. And so if we are not able to reach a consensus on the development agreement, we will write sections of the report to say that our recommendation changed because what we intended to achieve with the development agreement to make this use or intended development compatible with the goals of the tech corridor has changed, or we were not able to reach that consensus. So that's why our recommendation may have changed.
Would that then come back to this board at a future board meeting? Or would that go to the council?
That will go to the council, but the council can remind the case back to the Planning and Zoning Board, because in that situation, you may have additional information to make, to review again and make alternative decision.
Do we want to have a board discussion? Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Anyone want to discuss the case?
I would like to discuss it
Yes.
for a moment, Madam Chair. I raised this issue in a recent case where we were in the same situation where a case came before us. The development agreement hadn't been finalized yet, but it was referenced in the staff report. And at that time, I made the comment that this Elliott Road technology corridor is so important to the city and the future of the city in terms of job creation and what we're trying to build here in Mesa. And the development agreement is sort of central to approving these cases as they come to us. And it puts me in a difficult position. With this applicant, I don't necessarily have a problem with what they're proposing to construct, but I do know that the development agreement is an important piece of this, or the city wouldn't be pursuing that. And so I'd like to know that development agreement is done before we were in a position to have to make a recommendation here. I think that it seems a bit like putting the cart before the horse to vote on this before we know that the development plan is approved, especially when the planning department may revise its recommendation after this meeting if the development plan doesn't get signed between the city and the applicant. So, I had come here to the meeting today prepared to make a motion to table this item into the next board meeting to provide a little extra time to try to get that development agreement negotiated. But the director has indicated that there still is a path forward to keep this potentially from going to the council if the development agreement doesn't get negotiated. And I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I believe the applicant is acting in good faith, and I don't have a reason to believe it won't happen, but I'm a little uncomfortable voting for this today without knowing that piece is in place. And so like I said, I had planned to make a motion to table this. I've heard the director's, his comments about a different path. I'm still a little unsure what that path looks like. I guess I'm most comfortable with tabling this to the next meeting. Maybe we could hear from the director again.
Chair, board member.
So just an alternative way of looking at it. Given that one of the conditions of approval is to execute and comply with the development agreement, if that condition isn't met, then obviously, to me, that kind of voids what we're doing here today. So I'm also worried about overstepping our bounds. The development agreement is between City Council and the applicant. And there is no current requirement for property owners to opt in to the tech corridor. So I'm careful about us being perceived as some sort of de facto veto. A property owner is not required to join in. They're required maybe to have the development agreement or encouraged to have a development agreement with the city. But again, that's City Council purview, not our purview. And again, given that one of the conditions of approval is to execute and comply with, I'm perfectly fine supporting it as it is presented this evening.
Any other comments?
Sure.
So,
Madam Chair, I would just respond briefly that in the capacity of a rezoning case like this, we are acting in a legislative fashion. So we can take into account the totality of the facts of the case, and I understand your position on that. I don't know that I disagree with what you've said. I'm just uncomfortable voting for this. I would rather have an executed development agreement that had been completed at this point.
So I feel like with this one, it also it has the site plan attached to it. So there's already certain uses, and when you look at the site, what's going to be going in there, that it's kind of limiting itself to in itself. The fact that they're not required to have a development agreement as part of this, they opted in, and they're in good faith doing that with the city to work through their negotiations. And the development agreement is typically heard at the same time as the case. So you typically, most places, you wouldn't have them have the agreement prior to council adoption. One's contingent upon the other. So you wouldn't have it executed at that point either. It just sounds like they're going through the final steps, and it sounds like staff most likely would not schedule the case without that agreement to go forward. And if it comes down to it, I know the applicant probably would not want to do anything against staff's wishes, because he has a lot of cases, actually 3 here tonight. So he probably doesn't want to do anything against that. So, I mean, we can hear more from staff, but I feel like as Deanna mentioned, we don't review the development agreement. We review the PAD and the site plan before us. As it stands right now, staff has a recommendation of approval with some stipulations referring to the development agreement and the site plan, everything in place. And I feel like it has a good foundation for which to move forward. And city council, if they do have an issue with it, or staff has a really big issue, they may refer it back to us if they deem it's not appropriate. But that is there any other comments? Is Tim still online?
Chair, board members, if I may add few comments to it. So typically, we will not schedule the case before city council if there is no agreement with the development agreement. The reason why I wanted to add that sentence to it is typically when cases come before you and we have the condition to comply with the development agreement is because we are very close to reaching an agreement, and sometimes we do have it. But having said that, we can take the stand not to schedule, but the applicant may still want to continue, but I'm hoping that will not answer. So that's one perspective. The other perspective is our recommendation is also based on the intention that there will be a development agreement. So it's also within the board's purview that because we cannot firmly tell the board that there's been a final development agreement, that you may feel uncomfortable in either recommending approval to council as well. So you have various alternatives that you can consider.
All right. Do we have anyone willing to do a motion?
Motion to approve item 4C, ZON 21-00540, District 6, within the 10,500 to 10,800 blocks of East Elliott Road North Side and within the 3,500 block of South Signal Butte Road West Side, located in the northwest corner of Signal Butte Road and Elliott Road, rezoned from agricultural to light industrial with a planned area development overlay, site plan review, and special use permit. This request will allow for commercial and industrial development. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Recommend approval. Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote. Or all those vote. Board Member Boyle?
I vote yes.
Okay. All right. Shelley is absent, so. All right. Motion passes 5-1 with Shelley absent. All right. Moving on to item 4D, ZON 21-00620, District 6, within the 7,800 to 8,100 blocks of East Pecos Road, and within the 6,800 to 7,000 blocks of South Sossman Road, located north of Pecos Road and east of Sossman Road, rezoned from agriculture to general industrial with a planned area development overlay and site plan review. This request will allow for industrial development. And we have Jennifer for our presentation.
Thank Thank you, Chair, members of the board. This is Planning and Zoning Case ZON 21-00620. The request is to rezone from agricultural to general industrial with the planned area development overlay, as well as site plan review. The purpose of the request is to construct 4 industrial buildings. The site is located north of Pecos Road and east of Sossaman Road. The general plan land use designation is employment, which supports large-scale industrial development, typically employment uses of over 20 acres, and those uses would include manufacturing and warehousing. The existing zoning on the property is agricultural, and the proposed is general industrial with a planned area development overlay. Here are 2 site photos. The site is currently vacant, and you can see in the photo to the right, that's a view of the site looking north towards the site from Pecos Road, and you can see the airport in the distance. Here's the site plan. The site is approximately 155 acres, and it includes 4 very large industrial buildings. The 2 northern buildings are Building A and Building B, and they have the same footprint and the same building elevations. Buildings C and D are also exactly the same as each other, slightly smaller. All 4 buildings have truck docks on the 2 long sides of the buildings, and they have the cross dock design to the industrial building. There are separate vehicular circulation routes for the trucks from the regular passenger vehicle traffic. Here are the elevations of buildings A and B, the larger 2 buildings, the north and east elevation, and here are the south and west elevations of building A and B. Here's the elevations for buildings C and D, the east and north elevations, and here are the west and south elevations. And this shows a rendering of the site at the building entrance and of the overall building. This would be building A and building B. The design review board discussed this development yesterday evening at their work session and had a number of relatively supportive comments. They did have a couple of requested changes that staff is working with the applicant on addressing. This request includes a planned area development overlay, and that overlay would allow for modifications to the standard code requirements. One of those code requirements is the maximum building height in the general industrial zoning district. That maximum building height is 50 feet, and the request is for 60-foot tall buildings. There's another request to reduce the requirement for the number of parking spaces on the site, and the justification for that is due to the use not requiring quite so many parking spaces. There's also a request to reduce the number of bicycle spaces on the site for similar justification. There's also a request to reduce the foundation base width. It's the width of the landscape planter along the outside edge of the building. There is a requirement in the code for a 15-foot wide landscape planter around the elevations of the buildings that have public entrances. The request is to reduce that width from 15 feet to 12 feet along the entire width of around the entire elevation of that building, and 14 feet for corner entrances of the building. The reason for that request is to allow a closer proximity of the fire lane to the face of the building. The applicant did complete a citizen participation process. They notified property owners within 1,000 feet of the exterior boundary of the property. There were no concerns communicated to staff until just this week when there were some surrounding business owners that contacted staff. They sent 2 letters in. One of them is from CMC Steel, and one of the letters is from Union Pacific Railroad. This site does overlap with an anticipated rail spur line, and that's what those letters are about. We do have staff from the Economic Development Department here who are available to answer questions about the rail line, and I believe the business representatives are here as well to discuss those letters. In summary, the request complies with the Mesa 2040 General Plan. It meets the review criteria for a planned area development overlay, and it meets the review criteria for site plan review. And staff recommendation is approval with conditions, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do you have any board member questions for staff? Nope. All right, let's open it up to the applicant for their presentation.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, do you want me to give the full presentation or address any specific issues?
Let's do the whole.
Okay.
I mean, that's what they paid you for, so.
To be honest, we can be here as long as we need to. I'm totally fine with that. That works out great for me. Thankful for the chance to be here tonight. When you have an opportunity to develop land south of the airport runway, it sort of tells you what should be there. And so you're limited on the types of things you can put near an airport. And this is one of those things that fits perfectly with the type of land next to a runway. And in this case, what we're proposing are the uses that the city has long envisioned in this area, consistent with the general plan and consistent with these surrounding zoning pattern for that airport, as well as the Mesa Strategic Development Plan for that area, which recommends heavy industrial uses. Our request is for a PAD that allows general industrial uses. And so that proposal is not just only consistent with the GP, the area plan, and the zoning map, but with the long-term vision for this area. It includes an opportunity for some Class A buildings. They can be used for multi or single tenant. And more importantly, it provides the type of large-scale uses that you'd expect to see near a freeway. We have requested some deviations, but they're relatively minor compared to the 155 acres that are requested for this site. And I think that's why staff is able to recommend approval. I guess I'll wrap it up with some of the nuts and bolts of it. Is when you look for guiding documents that steer a project forward and suggest to a developer and an applicant what they should be bringing forth, we believe we comply with those guiding documents. And for that reason, we're here and asking for your support today. I think there's a question or comment regarding the rail line. And for that reason, I'd like to hear what's to be said. I've only received one letter. So if there's a second one, that's new information for me. So I'd be interested to hear their testimony and then perhaps comment later.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant at this time? Nope. Okay. I'll open the public meeting. We have two comment cards. The first one we will hear from is the railroad with Shelley Hertfeld.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Chair members. I'm Shelley Huckbelt, and I'm with Union Pacific Railroad. I am with our Economic and Industrial Development team. I do have, if you would oblige me, just kind of a short presentation that can kind of maybe give you an update and kind of give you some history and background to exactly what the project is that we're working on in this region. The project is known as, or let me start this slideshow for you. What's that? So the Pirate Project is essentially an acronym, which is true in railroading. We love our acronyms. It's the Pecos Industrial Rail and Train Extension. And really, it's a project that commenced in early 2019 that consists of, obviously, Union Pacific Railroad working with many of the heavy industrial users in that East Pecos Advanced Manufacturing Zone that had a vested interest in looking at using a rail solution for their transportation needs. It would connect essentially off of our Phoenix main line branch that's just kind of aligns with Rittenhouse. So it would come off right there off of Power between Power and Sossaman, and then it would extend east along that entire corridor into, essentially that eastern area where you have the likes of CMC, Fuji, a lot of those heavy industrial users. We've also, with the support of the city and the economic development team, they graciously applied for a grant for the project last year, a build grant. And at that time, that's when Union Pacific agreed to take the lead as far as looking and securing right-of-way and design efforts. We were not successful in getting that grant last year, but you will see later that we are now in the process of also seeking what was billed now this year is known as RAISE, with the city's support as well. And we are awaiting that information and kind of guidance if we will be successful in securing a grant for the project later this year. I think the notifications are due by the third week in November. Really the catalyst that kind of accelerated us, Union Pacific's interest specifically in this project, is the announcement of AZ2 by CMC Steel. As you know, that'll be a huge economic generator to the community. They will have a lot of product coming out of now not one mill but two mills. So, our interest is to be a transportation solution and provider for that. Obviously, with the benefits that rail supply or bring to the table, reduced greenhouse emissions and also a lot less trucks on your road. So, that's the ultimate goal of our project. We have, again, initiated the engineering and track design process. We have been actively working on the property acquisition, and that is in process for the right-of-way. We have initiated the construction authority process this year, and that is with any particular regulator and agencies that we may have to work through. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we applied for a grant again to help with funding of this 6-mile line. And that we'll hear hopefully later this year if we were successful. I think it's worth noting that was a highly supported effort. We had the entire U.S. congressional delegation sign a support letter behind the project. The governor, the Arizona Commerce Authority, many of the economic development communities, including Mayor Giles, also sent a support letter for that particular RAISE grant. What we are excited that if we continue to move this project forward and can secure the necessary right-of-way, as well as have it fully funded, we could be looking at constructing and starting this project as early as late 2022. So, it's coming up on us, and it would probably take us about 6 to 8 months to construct. And I can give you just a little bit of this kind of is just a depiction of exactly what the right-of-way and kind of where the line would be, and the alignment that we have in our design today. And you just kind of would follow the green line, and it just goes up and then is on the, southern boundary of the airport, and then just goes back down and follows kind of a Pecos alignment. The majority of why the alignment is where it is based on landowner feedback that we got early on, and essentially where they wanted it. It would be much simpler if we would have been able just to go straight across, but it doesn't always work that way. So this is kind of with the participation of the community, those that have been really willing to work with us and kind of go through this. And obviously, this line would go through a proposed project that you guys are reviewing, and this one in particular today. I think it would, it's as part of the process of the grant, Rounds Consulting did an economic impact assessment for the project, and a modest assessment shows that this project, should it be successful and be built, would generate a modest 16,415 jobs, generating a $16.2 billion economic output to the community, which obviously shows significant tax revenues to the region as well. So, we really think this is a great project for the region. As a rail developer, I can tell you that this is very unique. This doesn't exist in a lot of the places in the West. Union Pacific serves 23 states from in the western part of the U.S. There's just not a lot of areas like this. And I think, especially considering that your economic development team just won an honor at the IDEC, I think that this would be something that would continue to make you incredibly competitive, especially in the industrial sector moving forward as industries continue to look at Arizona. So I don't know if you have any questions for us. I'm happy to answer anything that you have.
Thank you. Board members, questions?
So you mentioned right-of-way a few times. Do you actually have a right-of-way secured along this proposed?
We have some of it, yes.
Okay, but not the entire line?
Not the entirety, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Board member Ayers? Do you have Peterson?
Shelley, right? Mm-hmm. Does the project live or die based on whether or not you get the grant?
That is our intention, and we hope that we will get the grant. But I think that based on a lot of the support and some of the industries, we have every intention of moving forward with the project.
So Union Pacific's prepared to move forward with or without the grant. Union Pacific's intention is to move forward with the project?
Yes.
And is financing in place to do what part of the project right now without the grant?
Well, I mean, even with the grant, we would obviously have to we are prepared to fully fund that, just because a grant would simply just be something that you get paid back. So we would have to front fund that, and we would do that through our capital budget.
Okay. And what is you mentioned the property acquisition is in process. What is your schedule for, and you have some of those properties acquired? What percent have been acquired, and what's the schedule to complete?
So I believe my real estate team, between either whether it's optioned or we have agreements or actually closed on some of the land, I think we have about 70%, I guess, locked in or under contract.
And is that, so that's some sort of binding agreement, 70% of the properties? Does that equate to 70% of the length of the railway?
I would have to check on. I don't believe so.
Okay. And then could you give us a summary of your past or current property acquisition discussions with the owner of the property in question that we're discussing?
So I have not been the one directly engaged in those conversations. Our real estate acquisition team has been. And I know that the dialogue started, some time ago when we started talking actively with everyone, including it started with some of the previous landowners before this particular development changed hands. We did speak to them as recently, as I think it was a couple weeks ago is what Stephanie told us. But we continue to have a willingness to work to make a mutual agreement. That's what we would like to do. That the door is open from our perspective. I don't think that we just haven't really been able to get there.
Are,
Yet.
So is that, does that mean there's progress in the discussions or no real progress at this point?
I would say there's not been a lot of progress.
And then one final question, are you able to speak to the eminent domain rights of the railroad for acquiring right-of-way?
I mean, do we have eminent domain rights?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? I have a question. I was just wondering, you mentioned the timelines and it seemed like some of them were overlapping as far as like the design alignment. Like I'm thinking more of like in terms of freeways and all those things that go into place. Like is your alignment finite, like the width and right of way area, or is it still being final engineered? Like where is that status? Because I noticed you also mentioned here you're entering the construction phase process. So I was just wondering, like, how they is it certain pieces have been finally engineered and you're in construction process for those, or like what pieces?
I mean, we have the alignment where we believe it makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the alignment is there, and knowing exactly how big we need that right away, that is we have that determined. Okay. I guess for clarification, we won't put any true construction activities wouldn't start until late 2022 or early 2023. Okay. So, there wouldn't be any probably dirt or steel in the ground till then. So, but we can continue to kind of work towards, finalizing and moving towards a higher level of design, just why there's a lot of other activities occurring.
Do you know when? You mentioned in November you would find out what happens with the grant. Do you know, is it early November? I know because November is like, what, 3 weeks away? Yeah. I was just wondering what time, if you have a timeline on that about.
So if memory serves me correct, the actual notification, I think said that they had to notify by November 22nd. Okay. But we are hearing that we should probably hear that it's more likely the second week in November that they will be announced.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any more other questions? Board Member Crockett?
Yeah. Shelley, I just want to follow up in terms of the funding of this. Is this funded? I mean, is it part of a UP budget in place for 2022 to build this? I know we've talked about the grant, whether it may or may not come through, but is the railroad, I'm just trying to gauge how certain this project is that it will go forward. And I guess if it's in a budget to be built, that tells me that there's a fair degree of certainty around it.
Yeah, it's in our 2022 capital budget, 2023 capital budget.
Okay. And in terms of acquiring property, the properties that you've so far been able to lock in, has that been through a negotiation with the landowner as opposed to eminent domain?
Yes. Yeah, oh yeah, all just mutual agreements, correct.
Okay. And does the railroad ever acquire property through eminent domain?
I mean, yes, but I don't think frequently, so.
Okay, it's not your preferred
Absolutely not.
path.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, understand. Okay, and in terms of where things stand with the applicant, if you know, are there any meetings scheduled with the applicant right now to talk about this that you know of?
No, not that I am aware of with our real estate team, no.
Okay, and do you know where the applicant is agreeable to meeting with the railroad on this project?
You could ask, you could ask the applicant, yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Right. One more question?
Yes, so this grant's been talked about quite a bit, but from your previous answers, the schedule for this process is independent of whether or not you get a grant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the timing of the grant really has no bearing on your schedule for moving forward?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you so much. All right, we have another speaker. Andy Surratt, I believe from CMC Commercial Metals.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Yes, my name is Andy Stratton. I'm the Director of Operations for CMC Steel Arizona. We're located at 11444 East Germain Road, Mesa, Arizona. You know, Shelley mentioned that CMC, along with a number of the Southeast Mesa businesses, have been working on this project for well over 3 years now. We have submitted, this will be the second year that we've submitted for the Build or Raise grant. So we would like to see this pilot project go through. As Shelley had mentioned, this past fall, or last fall, CMC announced that we were going to build a new state-of-the-art steel mill here in Arizona adjacent to the existing mill here. And a major consideration for us building here or selecting Mesa as the location for this new mill was the Pirate project itself. So the Pirate project, as Shelley also mentioned, the Rounds Consulting Group did a financial or economic analysis of what this would look like. It will definitely enhance economic development as well as reduce an awful lot of truck congestion on the roadway itself. We, as I mentioned in my letter, when both of our mills are up to speed and operating, we're looking to reduce over 1,000 truck travels per month on the Mesa roads here. So we're just requesting that the planning and zoning and City of Mesa encourage the applicant to work with the UP to realize this Pirate vision moving forward. And we just ask that this case continue on with discussion so that that can happen. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions? Board Member
Thank you.
Peterson?
Hi, Mr. Surratt, Andy. And you had mentioned that the grant again, and it sounds like your company's been involved in this, that you're a high-level stakeholder in this process. So it is that I'm still want to be clear that whether or not you get the grant, it sounds like from the railroad doesn't impact whether the project goes forward. So is there, to your understanding, is there a reason why the project hasn't happened or in the past 3 years why it hasn't moved along further since it's not contingent on this grant?
Yeah, well, I can give a little history because I've been part of this process for over 3 years now, but it was actually last January that the UP got involved and actually committed to leading the effort to acquire the land. So our first 6 months was really getting together with the local businesses, the UP and Mesa, to put together the grant, not necessarily focusing on the land acquisition. And I know that since then, the UP has been involved with those discussions with the landowners.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question. So as far as, you're expanding and building the new facility, how does that work as the business owner with the lines for your facility? Do you dedicate them? Do you work in negotiations? Like, have you already gone through that process with them to negotiate right-of-ways or widths or whatever? Like, how does that work as you?
Yeah, so we'll negotiate with them a right-of-way, and then we'll take it over at some point and have our own internal track. So it'll be a private track on our land.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Board Member Crockett?
Madam Chair, did I hear that we had someone from Economic Development here today?
Yeah.
Chair, board
Would you like
members,
to-
we do. Yeah,
Yeah, can we have economic development come on up?
sure. Indeed.
Hey, Chair, members of the board. This is JD Beatty, Senior Project Manager in the Office of Economic Development. Happy to answer questions.
I guess I'd just like to hear your take on the railroad and on the impact for the city of Mesa.
Sure, absolutely. So I can echo a lot of what Shelley and Andy have talked about here. So it has been a a public-private partnership, if you will. So the city of Mesa is the applicant for those federal grants. You have to be, or it's best to be a government entity to be making those submittals. And so we've been helping to coordinate with a lot of the property owners and a lot of the public and private stakeholders as kind of a central coordinator for this project for quite a few years now. And so certainly to answer kind of the pace of the project, it's a complicated project. There's a lot of property owners. Property has changed hands. The market is exploding out there, which is why this project is being proposed and looking to develop industrial, and that's what we've seen to be the vision for this area. But we also see rail being a part of that vision, and so that part of the vision has been something economic development has worked on for quite a few years. I would even say initial stages 4 or 5 years in kind of the grassroots level, but it's certainly gotten more complicated with new property owners coming in, new interests, new development, and that's something that we're trying to help with as best we can. But Union Pacific is obviously the private entity that is out, negotiating with private property owners and trying to make something work. So we're supportive of their efforts, but we're waiting on the RAISE grant, which we feel would be a huge boon for the project, and we've had a lot of stakeholders participating in this as well. The economic impact study that was conducted was actually funded by SRP in Pinal County, who were stakeholders for the project, and then we had the funding for the consultants that helped with our grant applications, which we included the economic impact analysis in, was funded by, I think, SRP and CMC Steel as well. So there's been a lot of stakeholder engagement on this for a long time, and we're trying to see it move forward.
I'm just wondering, a big component of this line, a big chunk of it goes through this piece.
Yes.
And it impacts them quite a bit because it cuts a big piece in half. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how those discussions went forward in the alignment, if you haven't had agreements or, I know you said it's changed hands many times, like what were the discussions with them before? Or because this, it really does change the way you can function on that northern piece.
Yeah, and I know the applicant, obviously, and Andy and his team will want to get up and chat a lot about this, but I will certainly say that this was not our first preferred path either. The route for Pirate has changed more times than I can count, and as Shelley mentioned, a lot of it was due to discussions with the property owners. The big change, really the biggest change that I think affected this particular property was originally the rail was going to cross a bit further to the west. And that piece of property is actually, we found out, it's owned by the Air Force. Actually. I think I can go back here. Yeah, thank you. So I can point to it here. So if you can kind of see my cursor here, this property, I think I'm in the right spot. This property here was where the line originally for quite some time was anticipated to run through. We found out later that property was owned by the Air Force and then is actually, I'm not sure what the legal instrument is, but it was part of the BRAC Air Force closure. It was actually promised to the Gila River Indian community. That relationship with that property obviously became very difficult, and it's a part of a Superfund site, and it actually requires the Air Force to conduct cleanup before really anything can happen on that property. So unfortunately, we ended up having to avoid that parcel, which then resulted into the alignment that you see here. We are very aware that that curve is very detrimental to this, this project and the way that it, functions essentially. So I'll certainly let Andy and Union Pacific speak to the specifics of their individual discussions, but I will at least line up that, this line moved north, south, further along Ellsworth. It was further south at one point, it moved further north, and Union Pacific has certainly tried to accommodate property owners' interests and needs. Obviously, there's a lot of property owners along this path, and I think they've done their best to move the route as best they can. And I wish we didn't have to move that line as well, but that's kind of where we got to.
Okay. Thank you. Any
Sure.
questions? Board Member Peterson?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Sure.
For CMC and their expansion plans, what level of guarantee was made that this rail line would be in order to expand that, or?
I don't know if that's something I can comment on as much as Union Pacific would be able to as the ones building the line, but I can say that at the time, we were certainly very optimistic about the rail line, being successful. As I mentioned, literally this area of Mesa is, as you guys hear very frequently, is expanding rapidly, and there's new developers and new owners changing hands every day. I can say certainly when we were discussing with CMC Steel originally, I don't think this project or this developer was looking at this site at the time, and I think there were other property owners that also weren't there at the time. So we were fairly confident, but it was really Union Pacific to make the acquisitions, and it's a Union Pacific rail line, not a City of Mesa rail line.
And then is this alignment locked in, or it sounds like there's still potential for it to be moved if there hasn't been full environment? If you mentioned an environmental issue on the other side moved it, so is this locked in, or there's still a lot of
Sure.
uncertainty?
I mean, I'd have to defer to Union Pacific a little bit on that, but I know that we're certainly looking for opportunities to work with each property owner, and I think they were trying to find a path that could work. I think with how they've gotten to, because each piece has to fall in line, right? So if one piece isn't working, we've already had a couple of property owners like things to shift, and that's then affected, one move affects everyone else, and that's the challenge with this. So it's, is there flexibility but on this particular project site? I think certainly the owner and Union Pacific would have to discuss that.
Okay, and then JD, one more question.
Sure.
As the Planning and Zoning Board reviewing specific site cases that have gone through the city process, which includes being routed to economic development for input, and then going through planning staff. Planning staff has made a recommendation for approval. So I think that's a big, at least in my mind, I won't speak for anyone else, but a big quandary of how do we get, if this is a real deal, and not to be the skeptic in the room, but I've seen a lot of things like this over the years that just never happened because it is hard to deal with multiple property owners and to line it up and everything else. If it is the real deal, and if this is crucial to the economic development of this area, how do we get to a point where we're hearing it's before us today and with recommendation for approval, yet you with economic development are saying, are you saying, oh no, don't approve it, or what are you saying in relation to this case?
Right, no, it's a good question. So, the big thing here, I think, and the reason it's approved is certainly Unbound Development is proposing a large industrial project. It would certainly be a different thing if they were coming through trying to propose a bunch of multifamily or something that wasn't conducive to the area. So we're appreciative of what Andy's looking to develop here with industrial and bringing employment and bringing jobs, which is really what the Pecos Road Employment Opportunity Zone was set up to do. I know he's not pursuing opting into that due to some land uses. But the use is okay. I think we're hoping that there is still an opportunity to work with the railroad. We obviously understand, though, that there's a lot of different interests. There's a lot of different factors at play here. And so I think our main goal is to make sure you have all the relevant information with the rail, where it's at, and taking that into consideration with your decision.
And then with that, if as far as time factor to get to a point of yeah, no, it's going to work out, or it's not going to work out, is there, I mean, it's not something we can't, we can't tell a private property owner, hey, this might happen sometime down the road, so we can't approve everything. So, I mean, there's, and like you say, this project brings economic development too, so so there's benefit that it brings as well.
Completely understood that you need to operate within the purview and the scope of what you're able to do here. Again, I think we're here to just present the information that we have on Pirate in terms of, can we give you a certain date of this is when we know it's going to happen or not going to happen. It's kind of also a cart before the horse a little bit, because property needs to be acquired before that decision can really be made. And Union Pacific is out actively negotiating as best they can with the property owners in this area, and that's still a work in progress.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
This question is just for staff. So it sounds like the big issue is you guys, your support, in support of the project for the use and the PAD, it's really boiling down to the site plan, what they're showing. Is that correct?
Chair, board members, that's absolutely correct. And also, as part of the review, economic development actually did provide comments to the applicant. So this issue is not something that is new, that has been brought up just during this hearing as well.
Okay. Any other questions for economic development? If we can bring the applicant back up.
Great. Thank you.
You know what works really well next to a rail line is general industrial zone land. And that's precisely what we're bringing for you today, precisely what your general plan recommends. And there's nothing in this proposal today that can stop the rail from doing what they want to do if that's the choice they want to make. For more than a year, my client and the seller have had discussions with the rail line, yet 0 offers to purchase our property. So if they have an intent to move forward, which I believe they do, they should present an offer. But I think to your point right there, I don't know if this is real or not. I know that they have statements I've heard, they don't have a grant. They've applied, they've been denied, they've applied again. They don't have the right of way, although at some point I think I heard it maybe a little bit. And honestly, I'd love to see you guys ask them a question. What right of way do you actually have? Up until now, I'm not sure what, if any, they do have. And the beauty of this case is we can go forward and approve it, and council can approve it, and they can purchase the property, and they can be a site plan amendment, and they can still do the rail line. We can have buildings, hopefully we can benefit from that rail line. Hopefully our buildings can be served by that rail line on that backside. And there's a process for that. It's a site plan amendment. And so simply, if they have a choice and they have a desire to go forward, make an offer, purchase the property, go through the site plan amendment process, and build the rail line. But preventing this case from going forward is basically saying, I'm going to put you on an indefinite abeyance until you sort that thing out with you guys later, which we can't control how fast they go through a process or their budgets or their grants. So we're just stuck here waiting. All we want is a chance to move forward with the case. And if they are able to put together an offer and present it to us and provide fair market value, it makes no difference to us who buys the back buildings. It could be the rail line for all we care about. But we want to move forward and have a case that we can actually develop and move forward with. And if they choose, they can run a site plan case and do that. But up until now, we have 0 offers. And that's the frustration for us, is to sit here and wait and wait and wait, and then find out that maybe our case could not go forward because they're still trying to make some decisions. And that's a long length to go to the very, very end to serve a private property owner. And at the end of the day, even if you can't come to a conclusion or an agreement on price, and I don't want to say there's been negotiations because we've asked and asked and asked for an offer and 0 offers. So I don't know if that's really a negotiation that they're describing or not. But at the end of the day, the tool they have available to them if a negotiation fails is eminent domain. That's a tool that they can use as a public utility to acquire this property if it truly is needed. And if that timing takes longer than we can wait for, they can eminent domain the property and have it that process. So there's multiple ways and tools for them to utilize the site. But as a developer and as an applicant, I just don't feel like we should be held up waiting for some indefinite things. Let us go forward, let us own the property, let us site plan the case, and if they decide to acquire it or eminent domain it, they can run a site plan case and build a smaller building to tuck a railroad line behind it. But when you look at that line and the way it bends across the corner, it cuts off a significant portion of the property. This isn't just a casual decision that gets made. But if they choose to eminent domain it, then they can do and utilize the balance of that property however they decide. And so for that reason, I hope you would just make a land use decision here. And land use decision is it's consistent with the general plan, the zoning pattern, the expectations for this area, and none of them in this case prevents them from doing what they want to do whenever the time is right for them to do that thing.
Question for you. So regarding the comment you made about they can take it at any time, or we could purchase it even regarding, when that does happen, that would require your property owner to come in through a site plan, but not only a site plan, but it's tied to the PAD, correct? So you would have to come in for both amendments, and you guys are aware with that and okay with that requirement for you guys to come back to redesign your site at a later time, even though it sounds like it could be as soon as end of 2022?
We're aware of that process.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what to say. We have a site plan and a case, And no, there's minor amendments that can be approved by staff. There's major amendments that come back through this body. But what if the rail line doesn't get built, ever? Then what happens? We lost the opportunity to move forward with the case, and deals fall apart. And it's not just us. There's many other property owners in that line who all are waiting for offers. So I know there's been words shared, mutual agreements, but I don't know if I know of any property under contract along that rail line. And none of that really matters. In our case, we don't have an offer, zero. So what should we do? Just hang around? At some point, sellers don't let you extend contracts that long. Deals fall apart. Investors and capital disappears. So those are real things. And if they've been working on this, I think quoted here, quite a few years is enough time to put together an offer and purchase property or something. It just hasn't happened.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a couple. So Adam, is your client the landowner or potential purchaser of the land?
My client is an escrow to close on this property before the end of the year.
Okay, so can you represent to what degree either your client or the underlying landowner has had input into the alignment of the railway?
I think he might be better answering that question. He's here with me today. Andy, would you like to share?
How you doing? No, zero. We, as JD mentioned, we did start, my first site plans had the rail, they were gonna have it on the north property line. And and this goes back to January of this year, and I started talking to the rail probably January. And we were talking and they never gave me an offer, and then mid-March, they said, oh, by the way, here's the new alignment. And as you can tell, that pretty much bastardizes that 36 acres on Sossaman Road. So I told the UP several times, we filed for a pre-app in April. I told them in March, if you want to buy this, now's the time, because it's a significant investment on my end. No offer. And JD, we had meetings with him. He pretty much has been acting as their real estate broker. I applaud him for his tenacity, but it's really been a lot of smoke and mirrors. So I don't know. I've been trying to make a deal with these folks. And when there's no deal to be made, what could I do? I can't sit around. I have a lot of big users that want to come to this property and employ people in the city of Mesa. So, I was not given any chance on the alignment, so.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the landowner?
No, I just had one follow-up question for Adam or the landowner. What's the timeline for construction on this project?
Well, first, let me clarify. I own 18 acres on Sossaman, from the Armstrongs. So we have 5 other parcels that we're I'm gonna buy, contingent on this case. So my plan was to start my CDs tomorrow and hopefully break ground in mid-December at risk grading, if not at the latest, mid-January 10th. I have ordered steel, I've ordered products. Due to the supply chains that are gonna get here, I can deliver buildings by Christmas next year. This is something that is very real. The UP is a pipe dream.
Any other questions? Tim, you're awfully quiet. All right, any other public comments? I didn't have any other extra cards, so I'll close the public,
Can I make a comment, please?
Sure.
So, Madam Chair and chairpersons, I just would like to say I would respectfully disagree that we have not tried to engage in dialogue on cost. I'm just going to maybe leave it at that because I could give examples of things that our acquisition team has talked through. And again, we're here because we want to come to a mutual agreement. We intend on building this line. We have a history of building railroads. That's what we do. And, this is a great opportunity for the region, especially with a lot of the growth that's occurring. If the landowner or applicant is ready to talk, we're prepared.
Can I ask a question? Has Union Pacific made an offer for the right-of-way relevant to the property we're discussing today?
Formally in writing?
An offer?
Informally, yes. There has been discussions, and we've asked for what would be necessary to move it forward. My understanding is even on the 36 acres that we bisect, I'll call it bisect, that we even, our director of acquisitions had said, well, if that's what it would take for the entirety of those two parcels, let's talk about it. But nothing happened after those exchanges and dialogues.
So has a specific dollar amount been offered for the right-of-way affecting this parcel?
Like total?
A specific dollar
per
amount.
square foot? I believe, yes, that according to our director of acquisitions, they have talked about dollar amount.
So an offer has been made. You're saying that an offer has been made?
And not,
It's a legal term of art, so be careful.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thank you. I won't make it.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
So just again, we're here today because we also would like to ask the planning committee to consider this being delayed and talking about it again and allowing us to have time to talk with the applicant and reach a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Chair, one more question. Yes. If you're, I'm sorry, Shelley, one more question. So if you're speaking time, what is that amount of time to get this resolved? Just because time is critical in this process and that's needs to be in finite amounts. So what is a period of time that this gets resolved in?
I would ask the applicant. How much? We're prepared to come to an agreement. And you asked earlier about funding. We have closed on property. It's public record. You can see that we own some of the property now. We have funding to close, and we're prepared to talk. So
what's I'm sorry to answer my question. What's a specific period of time?
He's asking because we usually have to continue cases to a specific date.
Thank you for clarifying. We're not the decision maker. So
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. It's
sorry.
negotiations. So
Okay,
it's like you could,
sorry.
Okay. Sir, did you want to make a comment? Rebecca, can you get him a card or? Sir, if you can state your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
William Wright, 343 West Veneto Lane, Tempe. And along with my partners, we're the property owners immediately to the east of Andy's site. I wasn't intending on speaking, but I wanted to add to what he had just said. We've had brief conversation with the railroad, but we've never received a general or specific offer of any kind from them to acquire right away.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is there any? Yeah, I think we're good. We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Oh.
No.
So I just think it's a good reminder about our function. We're not a court of arbitration. We're not here to negotiate economic development conditions. We're not here to negotiate property sales. That is simply not our function. So frankly, I'm just really uncomfortable with a lot of the testimony that has been provided. We have a case in front of us regarding land use. And while we may consider economic development conditions, we are not the Economic Development Board, Advisory Board. We are here to discuss land use options. We have a viable project in front of us with a landowner with proposed use that matches every other document that the city has regarding this area. To set that aside in favor of something that's an if, that's anticipated, that is a perhaps, I am completely uncomfortable with. We are not the Economic Development Board. We're here as a land use board. And as much as I want to see a robust economic development project in Mesa anywhere that it is appropriate, I find it unacceptable to trample on private property rights in order to do that. So I'm in favor of the project in front of us today.
And very well said. Yeah, that's a lot of those thoughts. And also I lean heavily on all the work that staff's put into this, and that staff is sending forward a recommendation for approval with full awareness throughout the entire process of the potential for this to occur. And then the other factor is that our action today, things that are outside of our purview, does not stop the railway from proceeding forward. If anything, maybe it creates a motivation to quickly get things done, if that's the true intent and the true desire of it to get it done. And that's where I am too. So it's hard for me to want to delay this for something unknown that might not happen when we have an economic development already stated. The current case in and of itself provides significant amount of economic development to the city, independent of the railroad situation.
Remember Crockett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see it quite the way my fellow board members do. I think that this is a unique case. I think the economic development opportunity that is here is extensive, and I think a lot of the economic development in that area will greatly be enhanced as a result of having this rail line. And I hear the applicant today state that they've been waiting for an offer and haven't received one. I've heard the representative from the railroad say, we thought we made an offer, or at least we thought we were having those discussions. So I don't feel comfortable moving forward today. I would like to make an alternative motion, I guess, that we table this for perhaps a period of 30 days to allow one more opportunity to let these two parties get together and see if they can get something done. I think that a short continuance of this matter would allow them to do that. I am sympathetic that there are private property rights involved here, but you know, we've continued cases before. This is an important case for the city of Mesa, and so I guess I would make that motion that we table this item for 30 days.
Did you want to make a comment? Board Member Boyle, did you have any comments? Yes.
You keep asking, so I will make a comment. My great-grandmother's uncle was Butch Cassidy, and he robbed the Union Pacific before, so I've been a little quiet, trying to lay low, but on behalf of our family, I apologize for that. But I think I'm more on the, I'm always pushing for Mesa for transforming and becoming more industrial and working on the non-residential elements of it. But I see this more along the lines of how Deanna and Troy have been saying. I think for what we are supposed to do currently as the Planning and Zoning Board, this should be an up and down vote on the project and not the larger things going through.
Okay, thanks.
When,
It's on to Troy.
for staff, when would this go to council?
Becky.
Chair, Board Member Peterson, it would be introduction on November 15th with action on December 1.
Okay, so there's 30 days between now and the council hearing. Really, those things that exactly along what Deanna said better than I'll say, and in our purview of what we review, it isn't going to change unless the whole case, and unless things get, the railroad works out, and then they come back with a whole different case to us. But that 30 days until it gets to council is time for the railroad and the landowner to work things out. And I would imagine that city council is going to be having a similar discussion to what we're having here today, and that's where everything comes together for a decision anyway.
Just in terms of parliamentary procedure, I think we have a motion on the table that has to be addressed.
He didn't say I move.
Chair, Board Members, Howell.
No, maybe I was a little too timid. I did intend to make a motion that we table this item for 30 days, and there hasn't been a second so far, so.
I heard the term motion. I want to be respectful of the fact that a board member made a motion, but if there's no second, then it dies and we're open for another motion. Correct?
I still haven't got to say anything, guys. Donna, did you want to say anything?
Chair, Board Members, yes, I was going to add a comment that the schedule that Becky gave you is kind of a general schedule. There is no requirement or specific date as to when items get scheduled on city council. There's several circumstances and things that we look for. So I just want to make it clear so it doesn't really become a permanent. It doesn't really convey to the applicant that this will be scheduled on that specific date. There are so many other things and we have to consider. So it could be scheduled at a later date or not, but I just wanted to make that clear.
Right, depending on negotiations. So I think the rail pirate alignment, that is an amazing project for Mesa. Amazing. It's got so much opportunity. It's got people already invested, looking for growth, and I think it's gonna blow up. It's gonna be fabulous. I don't want to say blow up. I shouldn't have said that word, but it's gonna be really good. I think I think it's going to happen. I do think it will happen. I just don't know when, or how much, or who. I feel like the alignment on a lot of these things is still very fluid, even though it's probably going to go around there. It might change a little bit over one parcel, a little bit over the other parcel. The issue I have is that this is what is in front of me, not the pirate project. This is the project that's in front of what's potentially to go. Moving forward on this case doesn't prohibit the rail line from coming in and making their negotiations and the applicant having to do an amendment and all these other things. It doesn't say we don't want the rail line. It doesn't say any of that. I mean, I'm going on the record. I know every one of our board members here fully supports this project, and any projects that come in along this rail line we'll be super excited for and want to encourage. We'll write loads of recommendation for getting these grants. This is something we definitely want. But as far as what we have in front of us right now, this is what's in front of us and not the pirate project. And so that is my issue with holding something, I don't like the term, but it's basically holding a site and waiting to see what happens. And I know that's happened, and I know they're pretty far along and ready to go on things. But it feels very similar to some of the processes when you hear about right-of-ways for a lot other alignments and freeways and they realign things, and that things change and you don't know what it's going to be. But at this point, if things change, it's not on the railroad. The railroad hasn't impacted a property owner. It's on the applicant, the owner of the property, to have to jump through hoops to amend that for that change. It's not the railroad's issue to fix that. It's their issue. It's still on them to fix the issue of how their site's going to fit. So I don't think it changes anything in that way moving forward. So I know some of the staff are not really happy with us, but it's just a simple issue of what we have available to us right now. I looked on the general plans. It's not on any transportation or circulation plans. This is a very new one that's still going through the process. I fully support it. I think the document's great. Hope you guys get it in November. But as of right now, this is what I have in front of me. So anyways, are there any other comments from the board? Or I'm ready for a motion if someone wants to make one.
Move to approve item 4D, ZON 21-00620, District 6, within the 7,800 to 8,100 blocks of East Pecos Road, North Side, and within the 6,800 to 7,000 blocks of South Sossaman Road, East Side, located north of Pecos Road and east of Sossaman Road, rezoned from agricultural to general industrial with a planned area development overlay and site plan review. This request will allow for industrial development. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. I move to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please vote, or all vote. And Board Member Boyle,
I vote yes.
with Board Member Allen absent. It is passes 5 yeses to 1 no, with Shelley Allen absent. All right, that concludes our agenda. Do we have any items to discuss from the planning department?
Chair, board members, we'll see you on the 27th. Thank you.
Bring popcorn. All right, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I keep saying that. All opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, guys. I'm used to saying all in favor, all opposed, and I never say the